Welcome ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to the video. I've got a new lens to talk about and show you, and hopefully you'll find this video informative. So essentially I'm going to do an unboxing video and I'll give you my thoughts on the lens. So what have we got to look at? Well, we have this lens. This is a TTArtisan 500mm 6.3 RF lens. This is basically a manual focus lens. It has a manual focus aperture ring, obviously a manual focus focusing ring, and that's it really. It's a 500mm 6.3 lens. It has 12 aperture blades, and it also has a 2 extra low dispersion glass elements and 2 high index glass elements. 12 aperture blades. It's pretty simple really. It takes me back to the lenses that used to be out there and you can still buy on eBay and Amazon really cheap. And because obviously Canon has put a stop to a lot of third-party lenses being made, especially autofocus lenses, they're not too bothered about manual focus lenses, but when it comes to autofocus lenses, that's where they put the brakes on. So basically I'll show you what's in the box and then we'll sort of round it off and I'll tell you what I think about it. But yeah, without further ado, let's do an unboxing, see what's in the box, what do you get with it, and we'll go on from there. Right, so let's just have a look what's in the box, ladies and gentlemen. So let's just open it up. So first of all, what you'll see is we've got an instruction manual which basically details how to set up the camera lens and obviously set up your settings on the actual camera. You do have to modify the settings a little bit so you can do shutter release without a lens actually on there. You do that by going to one of the camera settings and you just change it. It's quite simple really. It comes with an Ariston warranty card and one of those gelatin things to keep moisture out of the lens. So let's get rid of that and show you what's actually in the Ariston box. It is well packaged. Obviously we have some nice foam here, so let's just take the foam off and there you can see the Ariston lens. There's not a lot there to look at really. All we've got is a small lens hood, which I'd probably say is a little bit bigger than an inch, and it screws on the front, and obviously that's the lens in question. So if we take the lens out, obviously you'll see that it comes with a rear lens cap. There's no electronics at all on the back, so it's basically a dumb lens. And it has a nice metal lens cap. Take the lens cap off. It says Ariston on it, and I think it's quite nice in regards to being a good, useful lens cap for the front for the front element, protecting it, and it's quite nice. So just taking a proper look at the actual lens. It's all metal construction. It has a tripod collar mount there, although you should never hold it by the tripod mount because this particular lens has the possibility of it basically falling to the ground. So that's one thing you need to know. Obviously it's a 500mm 6.3 lens, large aperture, Cine Super NC lens. It has UD elements, 2 of them, and 2 index elements. Obviously it has fully manual aperture and focusing ring, which are nicely damped but very stiff in my opinion. And if you look at the instructions there, obviously it states that you should not hold the lens by the tripod mount. So looking there, you'll see it says do not hold the tripod mount ring directly to prevent the lens from falling due to loose screws. So on the front of the lens, it comes with a lens hood, which is about 1 inch long. It's not very long. I would have liked to have seen a much longer lens hood. Now the filter thread is actually 82mm, so if you want to put a UV filter on, that's the size you would need. And all you have to do to attach it on is just screw it on there, like so. And that will protect the front of your lens. Obviously I would have preferred it to be a bit longer, because I do think that's a bit on the short side. So you may, from time to time, get flaring in the front of the actual lens. So I just wanted to show you that point. If we look at the lens in more detail here, as you can see, that's the aperture ring, and obviously it starts off at 6.3, and obviously you can change it to f8, f11, f16, f22 and f32. Obviously when you go beyond f16, you're going to start to see diffraction in the actual lens, like most lenses do, and obviously the actual focusing ring is well damped, but I do feel it's quite stiff, and it does take quite a lot of movement to actually get it to focus. So that's something I have noticed. But all in all, it's quite a well made lens, and I don't think you would have any concerns regarding the build quality. The only thing that does concern me a little bit is if you were to hold the lens via the tripod mount, and there's the potential of it coming loose and falling to the ground. So that's just something important to note in this lens. So it's important to talk about the actual tripod collar itself. So basically you have this screw, like in most of the past tripod collars. To unscrew it, you just loosen it and it'll move. But my opinion is it feels a little bit on the loose side, unlike more refined ones like from Canon. And then to tighten it again, you just tighten that screw again. And then obviously on the actual tripod mount itself, you've got 2 places you can screw in. So if you would like to attach something to the actual tripod collar in order to attach your lens to a tripod, you just attach a plate to it like so, and then screw it on. So it's nice and tight, and then obviously that will be able to fit on your actual tripod with no problems, as you can see. And that will secure your lens to your tripod, no problems. If I'm honest, the tripod collar does feel a bit on the cheap side, but that's to be expected obviously when you're not spending a vast amount of money on the actual lens itself. Obviously my Canon lens is £2,000 more expensive than this, the 100 to 500 RF. I will compare the images so you can see, obviously compare it. So we've had a bit of a closer look at this lens. This TTArtisan 500mm F6.3 lens, all metal construction with 2 UD elements, 2 index elements, and 12 aperture blades, which is nice to see. It's got more aperture blades than most lenses have these days. The lens hood is somewhat lacking in terms of size, and I wasn't that impressed with the actual tripod mount. It does seem a bit flimsy, if I'm honest with you, and with them put a warning on there, it does give me cause for concern, which I don't tend to have with any of my Canon lenses. You can hold them and be sure that they're not going to fall to the ground. So they seem to have a bit of a lack of confidence, as it were, in the actual mount in terms of its security on the lens. So that's a little mute point that is a little bit of concern. In terms of the actual focus ring, it's quite stiff, it's well damped, but it does take a lot of movement and pressure to move that. The same is true of the actual aperture ring, which isn't necessarily a negative thing, but but something to keep in mind when you're out in the field, you know, getting used to this lens. Who do I think this lens is for though? I think it's probably for people interested in doing wildlife and sports. However, they may find it challenging and difficult to focus. Obviously, there's no image stabilization, so you will have to use fast shutter speeds, and no autofocus as well. That's mainly down to Canon putting the brakes on any third-party manufacturers making RF autofocus lenses. So that's something to keep in mind, guys, ladies and gentlemen. So that's just something, a mute point that needs to be mentioned. Obviously, a bit of news has come out insinuating that Sigma will be developing some RF autofocus lenses. That's a good thing, and that's something we've been waiting for, and hopefully Canon will relent a little bit more and allow others to join in and make some RF glass that's a bit cheaper. Obviously, you've probably seen my video about the RF 200 to 800 lens, where I've discussed it and compared it to the Canon RF 100 to 500. I will be putting this up against the 100 to 500. We'll be taking some test chart images. I've taken a few images of a mug, both on my R7 and R6, and a model bird that I've got indoors. I'll show you that. I'm finding this lens quite interesting, but it's in the field. I think it's going to be really challenging for anyone to focus. Focus is so slight to get your focus correct on this lens, so it's going to take a bit of practice. However, it's well made. You'll be able to pick these up for about £410. That's what I paid for it on Amazon. However, it's likely you'll be able to get it a lot cheaper, because shopping around, I found that you could pay as little as £300 for this. So if I'd known that, I probably would have bought it from another retailer. However, I will be returning this lens at the end of this review. Obviously, I just wanted to discuss the lens, and hopefully you find this video informative, talking about it. And I think it's a unique lens. Certainly is unique. Obviously, it's totally manual focus, and it's going to be a challenge and a lot of difficulty trying to get used to it. Now, back in the day, about 20 years ago, manual focus lenses was standard in the world. Autofocus had just come into the arena of photography, and obviously most professionals were still manually focusing stuff. So it's not to say you can't take images with manual focus lenses. It's just a lot harder and more challenging, and obviously you're not going to have the advantage of the super great, fantastic autofocus of the R6 and R5, unfortunately, with this lens. So that's something to keep in mind. I don't think it's really suited for wildlife photography and action photography. I think it's going to be better for static images, maybe macro photography, that sort of thing, doing some limited landscaping, that sort of thing. However, that's its limitations, I think, because you really need autofocus, and image stabilization is going to be quite important. Now, this doesn't have image stabilization at all, so you're going to be ramping those ISOs and obviously getting the shutter speed as high as you can. Obviously, you want to have a minimum of probably 1,000th of a second to get fast action. I would recommend 2,000th of a second, generally speaking, for wildlife photography. But it's up to you to make your own mind up. In the next video, I will be comparing image quality with the 100 to 500 RF lens, which is basically £2 more expensive than this. So there's a massive price difference if you were to compare them. But without further ado, we'll get on with that tomorrow, and then show you some real world images as well, some test chart images. I think it's always important, as I alluded into some other videos I made, that you should do test chart images or model images indoors, away from the atmosphere, so you can gather how sharp the lens is, because atmosphere is always going to affect your images, sometimes ruin your images, and you need to be mindful of that when you're out in the field, such as heat haze, thermal temperatures, and pollution will all affect your image results. So that's why it's always important to do indoor tests. I like to use lens test charts to illustrate how sharp the lens is, and also tend to get a model and take a few pictures of that as well to illustrate how sharp the lens can be. But I've not noticed any significant issues taking a few pictures indoors today. Apart from the difficulty in autofocus, it's quite stiff, the actual focus ring, and it can be quite a challenge to try and get sharp images. And obviously with slow shutter speeds, that can be even more harder to do. Anyway, thank you for watching and taking the time to listen to me look at this lens, and I'll do another one and we'll take a look at image quality next. So thank you for watching, have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.